Right, this is a video looking at different factors that affect conformity. We looked in the last lesson at Ash's study, where he looked at conformity, whether we change our behaviour or opinions to fit with another group of people. And Ash looked at whether people would conform to give an answer that was obviously wrong just because everyone else was doing it. So what we're going to look at today is what are the different factors that affect conformity in that kind of situation. What else can have an effect on whether you're more or less likely to conform? And just before we start, if we recap what Ash found, his overall figure, if you remember, was 36.8% conformity on the critical trials, which, remember, were the trials where everyone gave the wrong answer. And that figure, 36.8, is the number of times people went with the wrong answer on those critical trials where everyone else was giving the wrong answer. The number of times they conformed. So today we're just having a quick look at, if you change things in this situation, how does the level of conformity change? And there are three factors we look at: group size, unanimity, and task difficulty. And I'll go through each one of those one at a time. Okay, the first one, group size. Now you can see he's basically tried the experiment out with different numbers of people every time. This is research carried out by Ash a few years later. And if you look at the first one, where you've got one person in the majority, it's not really a majority, but anyway, let's imagine you run the trial again with the participant and one other person, and that person gives the incorrect answer. You've got a really low level of conformity in that case, 3.6%. Let's imagine now there are three people. There are two confederates and there's also the participant. The two confederates or accomplices give the wrong answer. Again, quite low conformity rate, 13.6%. A lot lower than the original if we're comparing this to our 36.8% that we had in the original experiment. Then we go on to where you have three other people, and suddenly the figure jumps 31.8%. Basically it's gone to 32%, which is quite close to the original. So Ash suggested that this was basically the optimum number. You can see that once we get beyond 3, it does increase, but not really significantly. Basically it's all around sort of mid-30s after that, until it drops back down at 15, but that's where the really big difference happens. So that's what Ash is suggesting, is for conformity the kind of optimum number is 3 people, and after that it doesn't make that much of a difference whether you add a couple of people or take a couple of people away. It's that optimum number 3 that matters. This has been criticised though by Williams and Sogan, who argued that actually it's not the number of people in the group that really matters, it's how important those people are to you. And you'll see this study in your booklet when you have a look at it in the evaluation. And he found that people are more likely to go along with the majority if they know them. So you're more likely to conform to other people if they're your friends, because you care about what they think. Okay, right, so that's group size. Let's move on. Unanimity. Are the rest of the group unanimous? Remember we talked about unanimous last week as meaning everyone else gives the same answer. That would be when the group is unanimous. So Ash looked at what happens if the rest of the group isn't unanimous. Do people still conform? So I've put this line of people here just to give you a visual, more of a visual idea. Let's imagine there's 7 people here. Let's imagine these are our participants. When you have basically, let's imagine that this lady in the purple top is going to give the correct answer instead of giving the wrong answer. So the group now is not unanimous. Everyone else is still going to give the wrong answer, but we're going to have one person, and that's who we call the dissenter or the partner, because they're going to be a partner to the participant and give the correct answer. So we have one person that gives the correct answer while everyone else gives the wrong answer. And in that case, it's only 5% conformity rate, again comparing to our 36%. from the original experiment. So if you have even just one person that gives the correct answer, conformity levels really drop in this experiment. And then he also tried where this person, for example, would start off in the first 6 trials by giving the right answer. Then after the first 6 trials, what they do is they conform, so the rest of the group becomes unanimous again. And in that case, conformity rises once they conform, once the group is unanimous again, sorry. So overall you end up with 28.5%. You can see that's a really big jump up from the 5% conformity. So that had a really big effect on conformity. If you have a partner and then they abandon you and start conforming, then you're really likely to conform as well, go along with everyone else. The last one is if you start where the rest of the group is unanimous, and then suddenly, after 6 trials, this person starts giving the correct answer rather than the wrong answer, so the group's not unanimous, your conformity drops to 8.7%. So you can see actually this is a factor that really affects conformity rates. If you have a group that you're with that are not unanimous, you're much less likely to conform. If there's even one person who's giving the same answer as you, who's giving the correct answer, you're much less likely to conform, much more able to resist that peer pressure. In terms of evaluation, you'll see again there's a study in your booklet that talks about the fact that this only holds if the partner is valid. So there was a psychologist, a couple of psychologists, Allen and Levine, that did this experiment, but they had the dissenter, the partner, they tried different kinds of people for the partner to see if that made a difference. So in a variation where they had someone who obviously had really poor eyesight as the partner, that actually didn't make a really big difference. Where they had someone with good eyesight as the partner, they found the same results, that conformity really dropped, that they were able to be more independent and not conform to the rest of the group. But if the partner was someone who obviously had really poor eyesight, like they had really thick glasses on, for example, then that didn't have the same effect. So it's not a really, what we can say in evaluation of this is it's not necessarily a really straightforward thing. Again, the factor of unanimity can be affected by other things, such as, is that a valid partner? Do we trust in the opinion of this person who is also what we call dissenting from the majority, who is also not going along with everyone else? Okay, last factor, task difficulty. When the task is harder, people conform more. So let's imagine that you had the original lines, and you've got quite a nice picture of this in your booklet that you should have a look at. You can see if the lines are much closer together and it's less obvious what the correct answer is, then people conform more. And this supports the whole idea of informational social influence, where you have people looking to other people for information. If you're uncertain in a situation, everyone else is doing a certain thing, then you will go along with them because you'll look to them for information. We suggest that that's not what's happening in the original ASH experiment, because it's supposed to be really clear and really obvious what the answer is. It's supposed to be really obvious which line matches. So in theory, informational social influence shouldn't be affecting behaviour in ASH's original experiment. It should be just people going along with the majority to not be rejected, to fit in, and so on. However, if you make the task a lot harder, so it's less clear what the exact answer is, then that supports the idea of informational social influence, because people are looking to other people for information. They're not necessarily 100% sure what the answer is, and therefore they will be more likely to go along with the majority, because they might be looking to others for information. It's not just that normative social influence, everyone else is giving the correct the wrong answer, so I'll just go along with it because I don't want to stand out, I don't want to be rejected. It's you have informational social influence, where they're not sure, so they go along because they think everyone else might be right. Okay, and that's supported by a number of experiments which are outlined in your book in terms of evaluation, but particularly this Lucas experiment is quite nice, where he gave different maths problems to participants and found basically harder maths problems had higher rates of conformity. Again, people weren't sure, they looked to others for information, and that was particularly true. They had higher conformity rates for people who were not confident with maths. So again, those people were not confident, they were looking to other people for information, therefore they were more likely to conform. Okay, so those are the three factors that we look at for the factors that affect conformity: group size, unanimity, and task difficulty. And you can see that all three of them have affected conformity.